Good morning. Welcome to Amir 5858. I am Amir Putnam. I am thankful to all international news resources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Asian, Canadian, African, and Australian channels, and of course AP, AFP, and Reuters news agencies. Now the news headlines. Transition from foster care to adulthood in America. Veteran benefit claim charges. Why so many miscarriages in America? Israeli strike killed 8 people in Gaza. 1,300 pilgrims died during Hajj in Mecca. Shakira Richardson for Paris Olympics. Arkansas mass shooter motive. Canada hot weather. Toronto federal by-election. Israeli army cruelty on tape. Oilers hope for cup. Gunmen killed 15 policemen and wounded many in Dagestan region of Russia. They also attacked a church, a synagogue, and 2 police checkposts. Israeli defense minister is in Washington. America accused of Crimea attack. Now watch the channels.
Tonight on PBS News Weekend, how one state is trying to help teenagers transition from foster care into adulthood. Then the unregulated shadow industry charging veterans to help make disability claims despite a federal law barring it. And how researchers and medical experts are trying to better understand why every year as many as 1 million pregnancies in the United States end in miscarriage.
All of us end up blaming ourselves. I did that myself, and I am a specialist in this field, but most of the time it's not your fault. It's not something you did.
Major funding for PB.
Get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing.
Have a nice day.
And with the ongoing support of these individual Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm John Yang. Palestinians say an Israeli airstrike on a United Nations aid distribution site in Gaza City has killed at least 8 people. The Israeli military said Hamas and Islamic Jihad had been operating from the building. Palestinian witnesses said those killed were either sheltering at the site or had gone there to get water or other aid. It came as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu doubled down on his complaints about the Biden administration's support.
But about 4 months ago, there was a dramatic decline in arms supplies from the U.S. to Israel. Over long weeks, we have turned to our American friends with a request to speed up deliveries. We did it time and again.
Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, a Netanyahu rival, is to meet in Washington this week with Biden administration officials. The White House has denied any slowdown in weapons shipments. The Saudi Arabian health minister said that more than 1,300 Muslims making this year's Hajj pilgrimage died amid scorching heat. Able-bodied Muslims are required to make the journey to holy sites around Mecca at least once in their lifetime. More than half of those who died came from Egypt, leading Egypt to revoke the licenses of 16 travel agencies for failing to provide adequate services or protection from the heat. At least 2 Americans were among the dead. Police in Arkansas said they believe the victims of a grocery store shooting were targets of opportunity. The motive in Friday's shooting in Fordyce, a small town south of Little Rock, remains a mystery. 14 people ranging in age from 20 to 81 were shot, 4 of them fatally. The suspect has been charged with capital murder. And star American sprinter Shakira Richardson is headed to the Paris Olympics. Her winning time in last night's women's 100-meter Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon, was the world's fastest so far this year. In 2020, Richardson won the Olympic trials but was banned from the Tokyo Games after testing positive for THC. Still to come on PBS News Weekend, the search for answers to why pregnancies end in miscarriage, and how one 9th grader is helping restore Mississippi's oyster reefs.
This is PBS News Weekend from the
On this Sunday night, the growing dangers of extreme heat.
It's too hot.
More than 100 million Americans swelter under record-breaking temperatures.
Very dangerous and life-critical temperatures.
All eyes on Midtown, the federal by-election in Toronto that some see as a referendum on the Prime Minister's future.
There is a lot of frustration.
Disturbing capture caught on camera.
Dehumanization is the biggest problem. It doesn't matter really what army you're fighting for.
The video footage sparking international condemnation and a military investigation. And the wingman with unmistakable pipes. Meet the octogenarian behind the voice of the Edmonton Oilers.
Gretzky, will he shoot? He does! He scores!
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sarah McDonald.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with more extreme weather across large parts of the U.S. Midwest, East Coast, and here at home. In the U.S., more than 100 million Americans across 27 states are still dealing with that heat and humidity that began last week and that scientists say was made twice as likely because of the start of the 1970s, coinciding with the rapid rise of heat-trapping gases into the atmosphere. And another tragic reminder of just how deadly extreme heat is tonight. We are learning that 1,300 people died from extreme heat at the annual Hajj pilgrimage, which wrapped up last week in Saudi Arabia. The ritual sees hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people converge upon the areas around Mecca. This year, temperatures soared into the 50s. In Quebec, a maximum security prison that once held notorious Canadian killers Paul Bernardo and Luca Magnotta has been evacuated because of forest fires. Correctional Service Canada says inmates from the Port Cartier Institution, northeast of Quebec City, were moved to other federal correctional facilities after an evacuation order was issued on Friday. It's the same prison where Robert Pickton was attacked and killed last month. The prisoners are among 1,000 residents ordered out. Several wildfires are burning out of control nearby, but today favorable winds were blowing away from residential areas. Conditions may not be so favorable for Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party in a federal by-election tomorrow. The Toronto-St. Paul's electoral district has been an easy Liberal stronghold for the last 10 elections. But this race is much tighter. As Mackenzie Gray reports, many see the vote as a referendum on the Prime Minister and his future. Mackenzie.
Conventional political wisdom says not to read too much into by-election, Sarah, but a vote tomorrow in downtown Toronto could be for now.
We wait and see. Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa. Thank you, Mac. In the UK, a fourth Tory is being investigated in a gambling scandal plaguing the governing Conservatives during an election. The party's chief data officer, Nick Mason, is the latest to be named in the British gambling watchdog's inquiry. It's looking into alleged bets made by Conservative members over when the election would be called. According to British media, Mason allegedly made several dozen bets before Prime Minister Rishi Sunak triggered the campaign. It's the latest setback for the Tories, who face dismal polling numbers ahead of a potentially historic defeat in next month's vote. To breaking news out of Russia now, armed militants have attacked 2 Orthodox churches and a synagogue and have opened fire on police in the southern Republic of Dagestan. Witnesses recorded video of the shootout with police. Russia's National Anti-Terrorism Committee says at least 6 police officers and a priest were killed. At least 1 church and a synagogue were set ablaze. Tandem attacks in 2 cities appear to have been coordinated. Russian authorities say 4 attackers were killed, but others have escaped. A search for the remaining suspects is now underway. There has been no immediate claim of responsibility. In the Middle East, violence and uncertainty continue to hang over the crisis in Gaza as peace talk efforts between Israel and Hamas stall. Last night, an Israeli airstrike hit a UN building in northern Gaza, killing several people, according to witnesses. And in the occupied West Bank, Israel Defense Forces are investigating a troubling incident caught on camera. It involves a wounded Palestinian man strapped to the hood of an armored vehicle moving through the streets of Jenin. Redmond Shannon has more, and a warning first. His story contains disturbing images.
A wounded man strapped to the hood of an Israeli military vehicle. The family of Mujahid Azmi says he was injured in an Israeli raid in the occupied West Bank. His cousin says Israeli soldiers took him away before an ambulance could arrive. The Israeli Defense Forces say the man was a suspect during an exchange of fire in the Palestinian city of Jenin. After the video emerged, the Israeli military said it would investigate, adding that the conduct of the force...
Look, he's tough, but he's a straight shooter.
Gallant says he will discuss the next phase of the war in Gaza with US officials. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Back in Canada, another pro-Palestinian encampment protesting the war in Gaza has risen in downtown Montreal. Organizers are demanding Quebec's pension fund manager divest from dozens of companies with ties to Israel and stop future investments tied to what they call human rights and international law violations. The camp comes on top of a similar protest at McGill University that's been ongoing since April. Another at the University of Quebec in Montreal ended earlier this month after the school satisfied most of the protesters' demands. Well, from party to potential prison time, more than a dozen people have been arrested in Greece on arson charges. Coming up, the luxury yacht excursion that allegedly sparked a fireworks show that nobody bargained for. Plus, the frantic search for survivors as a landslide sweeps the Swiss Alps. That's after the break. In southern Greece, 13 people have been arrested and charged with arson after allegedly starting a forest fire from a luxury yacht on Friday. The group of passengers and crew members appeared in court before a prosecutor today. They are suspected of launching fireworks from their boat, sparking a blaze on the island of Hydra. The fire was contained, but not before leaving parts of the island's only pine forest charred. The incident comes as another intense heat wave grips Greece, with dozens of fires breaking out across the country. And parts of Switzerland have been devastated by floods and landslides caused by heavy rain. In the Swiss Alps, at least 1 person has died and 2 others are still missing tonight after a rock slide wiped out parts of one village in the south. Hampering rescue efforts, many roads are either closed or impassable. And in Asia, rescue and relief efforts are ramping up in central and southern China after days of torrential rainfall there. More than 50 people have been killed by flash flooding or landslides. Tens of thousands more have been forced from their homes as major roadways collapse and large swaths of farmland are swamped. Officials say the rain isn't expected to ease until midway through the week. Feeling the heat ahead, how extreme heat is impacting our food from farm to store to table. Stay with us. A memorial service was held today for Ontario police officers and civilian members who died by suicide. Hundreds of people paid tribute to 51 officers today, including family members, colleagues, and dignitaries. The event is the first of what will be an annual one. Organizers say the trauma officers and civilian members experience on the job can significantly impact their mental health.
Because of their devotion of duty, they saw things and had experiences that impacted them deeply. Simply put, they experienced trauma that human beings are not naturally equipped to experience without consequence.
The memorial recognizes the positive impacts of the lives of the fallen officers and recognizes the grief felt by their loved ones. If you've been to the grocery store lately looking for olive oil, you'll know how expensive it has gotten. Olives are highly susceptible to extreme weather, and excess heat can severely impact olive production in countries like Italy, Spain, and Greece. But it's not just olives. In fact, so much of the produce we depend on is highly vulnerable to severe weather. And as Kyle Benning reports, the farmers who bring us our food aren't immune either.
Many were looking to beat the heat over the last week, but for Canada's farmers, there's little wiggle room for time away from the fields. The late spring, early summer heat forcing those like John Reeser to start picking their fruit earlier than normal.
The downside to it is that our season is likely going to end early, and we like to try to have strawberries ready for the Canada Day long weekend.
But the shorter season and limited supply could have an impact on prices. A similar phenomenon is taking place with olive oil as a result of fires and warmer temperatures in Europe. According to Statistics Canada, 1 liter of olive oil saw an average price of around $9 between 2017 and 2023. But over the last 6 months, prices have continued to rise from $14.33 in December to $16.32 in April.
The more we do now to adapt to climate change, the better farmers will be, and ranchers, and also the less costly.
Farmers for Climate Solutions is calling for further investments by governments to protect agriculture from the costs of climate change. While evidence of those impacts can be seen in crops with less moisture, it can also have an impact on people working in the sector.
We have to understand that we're not just talking about the actual crops being lost, we're also talking about if it's too hot for someone to safely go into the field to harvest, that results in crop loss.
And while many have seen impacts on their crops from fires, droughts, or floods, experts say action can still be taken to protect Canadian crops from further harm.
Canada is extremely well placed to have a bigger portion of its plate that comes from Canadian farms.
Genevieve Brosenbacher says that includes producing enough food for the country's consumption and making public investment in climate change adaptation to ensure Canadian farms can withstand the costs of doing business with more extreme weather. Kyle Benning, Global News.
Will he shoot? He does! He does!
The golden voice that never gets old. Next, meet the longest-serving wingman of the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers have touched down in Florida ahead of Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final against the Panthers. It is something that seemed nearly impossible after they lost the first 3 games of the series. Yet, here they are now, 1 win away from bringing the Cup back to Canada for the first time in 31 years. With how much is at stake for both teams, it could be one of the greatest games in hockey history. And as Jeff Semple reports, few are feeling the hype as much as the former longtime voice of the Oilers.
Wow. Well, here we are, the 5 Stanley Cup rings.
82-year-old Rod Phillips is an Oilers legend, with the Stanley Cup rings to prove it, though he never actually played.
So the Oilers on the power play with...
For nearly 4 decades, Phillips was the voice of the Oilers. His play-by-play career began in 1973, before the Oilers were even part of the NHL.
Across the line. Shoot!
The Hall of Famer announced 3,542 Oilers games, and wasn't afraid to call it straight.
I mean, if that's a penalty, I'll eat your shirt. Gravy stain on it. Yeah, I know.
When he retired in 2011, the team wore Phillips jerseys for warm-up. His banner hung alongside the all-time greats, including the Great One.
You covered the Oilers dynasty during the 80s. How does that team compare to the group that you're seeing on the ice today?
I don't know if you can compare the team today with the team of the 80s, because if you did, you'd have to say, well, you got to win 5 Stanley Cups. So that might be a little unfair, but both generations are truly tremendous teams. It's just fun watching the team grow. That's the thing that is enjoyable for me.
1945, the last time that a team came back from a 3-game deficit to force a Game 7, you were a toddler.
I was 3 years old.
Yeah. What do you make of this comeback story?
Oh, well, it's just, it could be the story of the decade. It could be just fabulous.
What's it been like for you to watch the excitement?
Oh, I mean, I'm just thrilled. I get goosebumps thinking about it, and we should appreciate it and enjoy it, because you're going to have these memories for the rest of your life.
Jeff Semple, Global News, Edmonton.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Sarah McDonald. Tonight's Your Canada is Buena Vista Park in Edmonton, which was packed with Oilers fans at the city's annual Pets in the Park Festival, which raised money for the Edmonton Humane Society, one of the city's largest animal shelters. Thanks for watching. Donna is back tomorrow. Have a great night.
And joining me now is Naheed Nenshi himself. Congratulations on the win, Mr. Nenshi. It was a landslide. How do you feel?
It was a long night, but I'm very excited. I'm very excited about the work that is starting now. What was really thrilling about this is the size of the momentum of the movement that we're seeing in Alberta. So many Albertans told us, they don't recognize themselves in this version of the Conservative movement in Danielle Smith's UCP government. They don't recognize Alberta in that version of the world. And so it's really exciting to me that so many people came out. We had probably the highest voter turnout of any leadership race anyone can think of. And I'm told that I received more votes than any provincial leadership candidate in Canadian history.
Wow.
And that really shows that Albertans are craving, that they're thirsting for a better kind of politics, not this sort of small-minded, divisive conservative politics that we're seeing, frankly, in Alberta and around the world.
So how is your leadership going to be different? What is something new you're bringing to the table? Breaking the party's lockstep with the federal NDP is one of them, I understand.
Well, we've never been all that lockstep with them on issues like pipelines, for example. But, what I was really nervous about when I jumped into this race about 4 months ago was that the kind of politics I did for so long as mayor of Calgary is really a politics that urges people to think about community, to think about a bigger future.
Tonight, a severe weather threat as we come on the air as millions from coast to coast are in the grip of the early summer heat wave. New details in the mass shooting in Arkansas. And we're days away from the earliest ever presidential debate. What we know about how the current president and the former president are preparing. First to that severe weather threat in the Northeast, powerful thunderstorms, damaging winds, even possible tornadoes as 100 million Americans across 27 states remain under heat alerts. In the heartland, the National Guard is assisting residents in flood-ravaged northwest Iowa. Rivers are expected to crest over record levels. Ike Jachi reports from Washington, D.C. Samar Theodore has the forecast. As Americans seek relief, beachgoers beware. Officials warn of a high risk of rip currents along the eastern seaboard and Gulf Coast. Several recent drownings reported from Florida to New York. What experts say you should do if you're caught in a rip current. The death toll rises in the deadly mass shooting in Arkansas as authorities share details of how the incident unfolded in the parking lot of that supermarket and what we're learning about the victims, including the nurse being hailed as a hero. 4 days until the first presidential debate of 2024, President Biden hunkering down at Camp David, former President Trump on the campaign trail, teasing his possible vice presidential pick. What we know about the very different ways the two men are getting ready. Overseas in the war between Israel and Hamas, Prime Minister Netanyahu doubles down on his claims that arms shipments from the U.S. are decreasing. What the White House is saying is deadly IDF strikes level more buildings in northern Gaza. And Israel's defense minister prepares for meetings with officials here in the U.S. Tom Sufi Burge tonight from Tel Aviv. Details just coming in of several deadly attacks in the southern Russian Republic of Dagestan. A synagogue and 2 churches targeted. What we're learning. Fishermen to the rescue, saving dozens of dogs from a Mississippi lake. And America Strong tonight. They aren't just saving lives, they're making them. The baby boom at one California fire department.
From ABC News World Headquarters.
The left is preparing for a possible Trump victory. Pro-immigration groups are drafting lawsuits if deportations become a reality. Washington State Governor Jay Inslee is stockpiling abortion drugs under some belief a Trump presidency would outlaw such drugs. Litigation will be every bit as prevalent as legislation by this time next year. Joining us is Republican Party Conference Chair Congresswoman Elise Stefanik from the great state of New York. Welcome, Madam Chair. It seemed like things were, I was there with you, a little slow out of the gates in 2016, and of course the Russia cloud didn't help, but is there a legislative agenda ready to go if the GOP wins the White House and the House?
Well, there is. First of all, thank you, Trey, for the opportunity to be on your show. You're a good friend, and we miss you as a former colleague, but so proud to be able to share our message. We are focused every day on ensuring that we have a historic victory on Election Day. President Trump continues to do well in swing state polls where he is polling ahead everywhere, but we know that in addition to electing President Trump, we need to flip the Senate, but most importantly, we need to make sure that we maintain and gain seats in the House. So we're working on the political strategy to win, but also importantly to hit the ground running to govern on behalf of the American people, particularly as you're seeing so many crises because of Joe Biden's failed policies. We are ready to go on day one to support President Trump's agenda, and I want to outline a few key focuses. One is securing the border. We passed the Secure the Border Act, H.R. 2, which returns to President Trump's effective border security policies, which have been completely washed away and catastrophic under Joe Biden. Additionally, we're focused on unleashing American energy independence. We passed H.R. 1, which would unleash a boom of American energy independence, which Joe Biden declared war on day one. In addition, we want to return to peace through strength. You know I'm focused on that on the House Armed Services Committee, on the House Intelligence Committee, and that means strongly supporting our allies like Israel, which Joe Biden has turned his back on. So we're already working to make sure that we can hit the ground running on day one and deliver productive results to the American people immediately.
All right, Congresswoman, we've seen yet another young woman killed at the hands of someone let loose in this country, a child murdered in Texas by men who claimed they were fearful of danger in their own country, another child sexually assaulted by someone who crossed the border. Biden claims the Senate bill would have solved all of these problems. They would not have, but that's what he's going to claim. Is there a GOP plan that can pass Congress, secure the border, and begin to expeditiously remove those who cannot follow our laws before they kill and rape people?
Absolutely, Trey. And this is yet another tragedy. It's a human tragedy, what is happening at our southern border, and frankly, our border, I represent a northern border district as well, but this is yet another loss of life stemming from this illegal immigration crisis, which is because of Joe Biden's border policies. What we included in the Secure the Border Act, which we passed despite our very slim majority that we hold today, was ending catch and release. Now, we know that these illegal, violent criminals who murdered this innocent, young, beautiful girl, we know that they were encountered by Border Patrol, but because of catch and release, they were released. And therefore, unfortunately, they committed this heinous, violent murder, and they need to be held accountable. How we do that is ensuring that we have a House majority to vote again on the Secure the Border Act, that the Senate passes that bill, President Trump will sign that into law because they are President Trump's policies. And also this humanitarian crisis, Trey, think about the human trafficking that has occurred because of this border crisis. There's not a lot of focus on this, but nearly 100,000 minors have been lost completely by Joe Biden's Department of Homeland Security. They don't even know where they are, who were illegally trafficked across our southern border. So this is a humanitarian crisis, and the
Raging forest fires forced the evacuation of a maximum security prison. Inmates moved from the federal facility on Quebec's North Shore, while flames in Labrador keep hundreds out of their homes.
You can see the smoke towering up right over our town.
A shattered trust in Canada's sports landscape.
Don't pretend that we don't need a new law.
Calls for a public inquiry to help athletes suffering in silence.
The system is designed against the athlete.
And the digital tool providing medical resources to people in remote communities.
It allows the patient to do self-management.
Plus, the strength of star power.
The fact that he chose it on his own, that just makes me super happy.
An East Coast business gets a boost in sales thanks to Snoop.
I'm a gangster, but y'all know that.
Tonight, weather extremes. Disaster in the Midwest, floods swamp Iowa where the rain just won't stop. Violent storms strike several states with hail and more, while much of the country broils in heat.
I'm Chanel Call in New York City, where we could soon see a break from these oppressive temperatures.
Also tonight, with the war in Gaza grinding on, Israel takes aim at U.S. support.
I'm Amir in Tel Aviv, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has doubled down on accusations that the Biden administration is withholding weapons deliveries for Israel.
In another war zone, Russia and Ukraine this weekend trading attacks. Presidential debate, the first face-off of 2024, now 4 days away. Plus, price fight. Fast food chains update menus after your complaints.
I'm Kenny Choi in Los Angeles with the appetizing new deals in the battle for your buck.
And later, Gone Green. This popular old ride now powered by clean energy, and we're on board.
Come down your back into Napa Valley where the wine trade is going green.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with
Welcome to Night Watch on France 24. These are our top headlines. Several people are killed in Russia's Dagestan region by unknown gunmen carrying out coordinated attacks in 2 cities. A police post and places of worship were attacked and set alight before the assailants fled. The Israeli defense minister is in Washington on a whirlwind trip trying to shore up support as the Prime Minister Netanyahu accuses the US of withholding weapons it fiercely denies. And Russia blames the United States for an attack on annexed Crimea, accusing it of providing Ukraine with both the weaponry and the target location. A missile exploded over a crowded beach, killing several people and wounding many more. Thanks for being with us on the Night Watch. I'm Alexander Orcott. Now, in Russia's Dagestan region, first of all, gunmen have launched simultaneous attacks on 2 cities. A synagogue and 2 Orthodox churches, as well as a police post, all came under fire. At the latest count, 15 policemen were killed, along with a priest and a church security guard. Now, 2 of the places of worship were set on fire. A major manhunt is now underway. The mayor of Makhachkala gave this update.
The relevant services and law enforcement agencies worked quickly, but unfortunately there were losses. We offer our sincere condolences to the families and friends whose sons and brothers died today. Currently, law enforcement agencies are taking all necessary measures aimed at restoring law and order. This may cause certain inconveniences and restrictions for citizens and guests of the capital.
There's been no claim of responsibility, but the region has been frequently rocked by Islamic attacks over the years. The police have detained a prominent local politician amid reports that 2 of his sons were among the gunmen. For more details, the political analyst Alexandra Filipenko joined us earlier. She told us more about the security situation in Dagestan.
it seems that FSB is not in full control. And I think we all should recall the attack on Makhachkala airport when on October 29th, a mob broke into the airfield in search of Jews who had flown in from Tel Aviv. The Dagestanians were looking for Jewish citizens and people with Israeli passports, actually, to arrest them or to do something with them, because there famously is a layover in Makhachkala when people are flying from Tel Aviv to Moscow or to St. Petersburg. There is this layover. So on October 29th, that mob broke into the airfield and actually stopped the work of the airfield and of the Makhachkala airport. So it seems that Dagestan is not fully in control of Russian officials and of Russian official services, of Russian special services of the FSB. Dagestan has always been known for being quite a dangerous spot on a Russian map, and in mid-2000s there have been many killings of mayors and of officials in Dagestan. So I would say this region, of North Caucasus, is known for being very much distant from, let's say, Moscow forces. And it seems that FSB has a hard time controlling the situation over there.
Moving on now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was given a lengthy interview in which he said the operations in Gaza will be winding down after more than 8 months, as the intense fighting against Hamas militants is almost over. Though he gave no exact timeline for when the war will end, he said this will free up more troops to confront Iran-aligned Hezbollah militants in Lebanon to the north and allow the evacuated Israeli residents who live near there to return home.
After the intense phase is finished, we will have the possibility to move part of the forces north, first for defensive purposes, and secondly to bring our residents home. If we can, we will do this diplomatically. If not, we will do it another way. But we will bring them home, all the residents from the north, as well as the ones from the south.
Well, the prospect of more Israeli forces heading to Lebanon has led to a warning from a top US military officer that this would risk an Iranian response that could trigger a broader war. Netanyahu has also accused the United States of freezing some arms deliveries and has thus dispatched his defense minister to Washington. For more on that, here's our correspondent, Fraser Jackson.
There were growing signs of frustrations between Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and US President Joe Biden on Sunday, as Netanyahu doubled down on comments that the US was withholding weapons shipments to Israel. He said that 4 months ago there was a, quote, dramatic drop in the amount of arms being shipped to Israel, and that he's been working behind the scenes to try to get those blockades lifted and to get the full flow of weapons restored. And ultimately, in a last-ditch attempt to lift that bottleneck, he released that video on Tuesday last week where he said that the US was withholding these arms. Now, that video was reacted to by the White House. They said that they genuinely didn't know what Netanyahu was talking about, and also said that the video was vexing and perplexing. So the White House now responding to this latest comment from Netanyahu on Sunday, one senior administration official telling a reporter at Axios, quote, "We aren't going to keep responding to the Prime Minister's political statements. We look forward to constructive consultations with Defense Minister Gallant in Washington this week." Now, Defense Minister Gallant just arrived in Washington on Sunday evening, and he is having some high-level meetings with Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary, and also Anthony Blinken. Lots of things to be discussed there. They see Gallant as somebody that they can actually talk to and get their points across. Gallant has been quite supportive of the US position in the last few months. They are going to be discussing the ceasefire, but also the escalating situation on the northern border with Lebanon as well. Increased rocket fire with Hezbollah, with which the defense minister and also Netanyahu said could see more fighters be sent to the north if the situation in Gaza slows down and the fighting there draws to a close.
Looking now at the latest from the Gaza Strip. In the Gaza city in the north, 8 Palestinians were killed on Sunday in an Israeli airstrike on a training centre being used to distribute aid supplies, according to witnesses who said the people were there to receive coupons and fill up their water containers. The Israeli military said, though, that the site that has been run by the refugee agency UNRWA was being used by militants from Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Next, Saudi Arabia has raised the death toll from Hajj pilgrims this year to more than 1,300, saying that most of those who died did not have official permits. This led to many of them walking long distances in direct sunlight as temperatures around Mecca soared to well above 50 degrees Celsius. The pilgrimage is, of course, one of the 5 pillars of Islam that all Muslims must complete at least once in their lives, and many of those who perished were the elderly who had pre-existing conditions. Now, tensions are rising between Moscow and Washington again as Russia expressed outrage over alleged US assistance in Ukrainian strikes on annexed Crimea. Russian officials said a missile exploded above a beach area of Sevastopol, firing shrapnel at people who'd been relaxing there. The governor said 3 children and 2 adults were killed and almost 120 people were wounded. Our Ukraine correspondent Gulliver Cragg has the latest.
The Russians are claiming that the Ukrainians fired American-supplied ATACMS missiles at Crimea, and they say that they shot down 4 of them. And then, this is what's interesting, the first message that was put on Telegram by the Russian Defense Ministry said that a fifth one was diverted from its course and exploded in the air above a beach in Sevastopol. It's on this beach in Sevastopol that, as I understand it, civilians were killed and, as you said, dozens were injured. Then there was a later communication from the Russian Defense Ministry which takes out the bit of taking a deflection as a result of the work of Russian air defences. And they're trying to say that the Ukrainians deliberately targeted civilians here. And of course, the Russians are also directly blaming the Americans for this because the weapons were supplied by the United States. There hasn't been any comment yet from the Ukrainians, but I expect that the Ukrainians will try to say, look, this was not what we deliberately targeted. This is the result of the poor work of the Russian air defences, which caused debris from these missiles, or at least from one of them, to land on this beach.
Cessationist protesters have lit several fires in New Caledonia, blocking the main roads that lead to its capital, Noumea. This came as 7 independence activists linked to riots last month in the French South Pacific archipelago were sent to the mainland for pre-trial detention. Deadly riots erupted in May when the indigenous Kanak people reacted angrily to French President Macron's voting reforms that they say will dilute their voices in elections. Now, we are, of course, just less than a week away now from these snap parliamentary elections here in France, and the far right are leading the polls. The National Rally leader, Marine Le Pen, has put huge time and effort into softening her party's image to make it more palatable for more voters. But this weekend, thousands of feminist activists took to the streets saying they don't believe a word of it, and that the party still poses a threat to women's rights.
With the far-right National Rally currently leading in opinion polls ahead of the first round of France's snap parliamentary elections next Sunday, demonstrators, many from feminist organisations, have taken to the streets in cities across France to protest against the party. They fear a National Rally victory could set back women's rights in the country.
I wanted to assert our values that cannot be defended by a party like the National Rally. A party that opposes equal pay between men and women. A party that represents everything but women's rights.
I think that's what makes them dangerous, the fact that they put on a feminist facade, but their actions don't match up. Because yes, some members of the National Rally voted to enshrine abortion in the Constitution, but many did not. The party rejects claims that it has an anti-feminist agenda. Of its 88 MPs, 31 voted against or abstained from voting to enshrine abortion in the French Constitution earlier this year. At the European Parliament, many National Rally MEPs abstained from voting on a directive concerning equal pay for men and women, prompting concerns among women's rights groups about what a victory for the party could mean for wage equality. On June the 17th, the National Rally's candidate for Prime Minister, Jordan Bardella, posted a video vowing to protect women's rights if he is elected.
The freedom between women and men, the freedom to dress as we wish, the fundamental right to control our own bodies are non-negotiable principles.
But not everyone is convinced. On Sunday, similar protests to those in Paris took place in dozens of French cities, including Toulouse and Rennes.
And of course, the election's been watched around the world, with some fearing the outcome of President Macron's political gamble. Among them is the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who expressed his concerns on the public broadcaster ARD.
I'm a little hesitant to comment on election results before the election has happened. This goes for domestic elections and even more so for foreign ones. I am indeed worried about the elections in France. I would like to underline that, and I hope the parties which are not Le Pen, to put it that way, are successful in this election, but it's up to the French to decide that.
Next, an investigation into how a 37-year-old woman came to be attacked by a pack of wolves here in France is ongoing. She'd gone out for a jog early in the morning after spending the night with her family at a safari park resort near Paris and ended up in an area that was only meant to be visited by car. She was bitten on her neck, back and calf by 3 Siberian wolves before the park rangers heard her screams and rushed to help. She was in a bad situation, but is said now to be not in a life-threatening mode. It was not clear now whether she made a mistake on the trail as she went running or whether it wasn't clearly marked. Sport, finally, and Scotland's first international football tournament in a generation has already ended in heartbreak after Hungary's Kevin Chubot slotted a goal past them in the 10th minute of injury time to score a 1-0 victory for Hungary, knocking Scotland out of Euro 2024. This came as Switzerland held Group A leaders Germany to a 1-1 draw to finish second. Both those sides now comfortably through to the last 16. Looking ahead later on Monday to the next games from Group B that will see Albania versus Spain and Croatia versus Italy. Those are taking place at 9 p.m. local time, all 4 teams playing. Spain, we already know, are through as they've won 2 games, but for the rest, it's all to play for. And that's it. Stay tuned to France 24.
Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Across Africa, a weekly look at stories from across the continent. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith, and this week, as the indiscriminate bombings of Sudan's 14-month war between the army and the RSF paramilitary
2 games, but for the rest, it's all to play for. And that's it. Stay tuned to France 24.
Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Across Africa, a weekly look at stories from across the continent. I'm Georgia Calvin-Smith, and this week, as the indiscriminate bombings of Sudan's 14-month war between the army and the RSF paramilitary continues, a recent resident of the besieged Darfuri city of El Fasher shares a rare account of the devastating toll of war on her and her family. Also, all aboard. 1,400 passengers get a free ride from Dar es Salaam to Morogoro on Tanzania's first electric standard gauge railway in celebration of a game-changing stop on the journey to transforming its infrastructure. And charcoal production can be a driver of deforestation, so one environmentally conscious organisation in Senegal's trying to get more communities to rely on less destructive and more energy-efficient alternatives. But first, the UN Security Council's call for the end to the RSF paramilitary's brutal siege of the Darfuri city of El Fasher is a reflection of
Share Australia-wide. Maggie Beer's big mission. Lives are at stake. Starts July 9 on ABC TV and ABC iView.
Today on Notice, supermarkets to be fined if they mistreat suppliers as part of the government's mandatory code of conduct. Police search for a third teenager involved in a fight that forced an Adelaide shopping centre into lockdown. 3 days of mourning declared after gunmen kill at least 17 in Russia's Dagestan region. And Australia's lucrative fertility industry to undergo a major review following governance and standards concerns. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Ruby Cornish. Supermarkets could be hit with substantial fines for breaching new rules aimed at ensuring they treat suppliers fairly. The federal government is hoping a mandatory code of conduct for supermarkets will bring new competition to the sector. Political reporter Tom Lowry has more from Canberra.
This is a new mandatory code for supermarkets mandating how they deal with their key suppliers. There's been this key concern for a long time that Australia's supermarket industry will certainly turn up the heat, I suppose, in the energy debate.
Tom Lowry reporting there. Police are searching for a third suspect after arresting 2 teenagers over a violent brawl that led to a lockdown of a Westfield Marion shopping centre in Adelaide South yesterday. Centre management issued an evacuation alarm just before 3 o'clock after reports of fighting between 2 groups of young males, some carrying weapons. Reporter Sophie Holder has more from Marion.
We're here today at Marion and things look to be returning to normal with the stores reopening this morning and plenty of shoppers here as well despite the weather. Now it's a different sight to yesterday afternoon when safety of its people and its employees was of the highest priority.
Sophie Holder in Adelaide, thank you for the update. Police have recovered 3 weapons from a property related to a fatal shooting in North Queensland last week. Ryan Jeffrey Cole allegedly shot and killed 34-year-old Natalie Fram outside her home in South Mackay. The alleged murder weapon and a homemade device have today been seized from his home. Jemima Burt has more from Brisbane.
We've just heard from police about the latest in this investigation. Over the weekend, they've gone into this property belonging to Ryan Cole and found 3 unlicensed, unregistered weapons. The victim. So that investigation will continue, but Ryan Cole remains in custody, charged with her murder as well as the attempted murder of the neighbour, James McGill.
Okay, Jemima Burt in Brisbane, thank you.
Thanks.
A person has died in a caravan park fire in Melbourne's west. 28 firefighters arrived to find a caravan fully engulfed in flames. Reporter Stephanie Ferrier has more.
You can see here behind me the results of this absolutely devastating inferno. This once was a caravan, but you can see it's been completely destroyed. Man inside. So police are now investigating his death.
Stephanie Ferrier there. And to some news just in now, Sport Integrity Australia has found federal independent MP Andrew Wilkie's allegations of drug cover-ups in the AFL have no substance. National sports reporter David Mark joins us now in the studio for more on this. Hi David. So remind us what these allegations were.
Yeah, so Andrew Wilkie, the independent MP, made the allegations using parliamentary privilege in March.
This is Asia Now.
It is 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi, and 11 o'clock in Jakarta on Phuket. At this hour, India's education sector rocked by a scandal that could disrupt Parliament, which convenes today. Paper leaks, discrepancies, and corruption alleged in the conduct of examinations for entry into medical schools and research programs. Saudi officials confirm more than 1,300 people died during the pilgrimage in Mecca this year. 8 in 10 pilgrims did not have official permits. Most of them walked the long distances under the searing sun.
Johor has been influenced by Woodlands, and definitely Woodlands has been influenced by the Johorians as well.
A vital bridge linking Singapore and Malaysia marks 100 years in operation, as both countries work to improve connectivity and increase business links on either side of the world's busiest land border crossing. India's new parliament sits today for the first time after the general election. It could be a contentious session as the opposition presses the Modi government over the so-called exam scandal. There are protests nationwide involving alleged cheating and corruption in elite examinations. The newly emboldened opposition bloc plans to march to parliament today to demand the resignation of the education minister. Angry scene.
Egypt has withdrawn the licenses of over a dozen tourism companies accused of causing the deaths of hundreds of people during the Hajj pilgrimage in Mecca. Media reports say as many as 1,000 pilgrims died in Saudi Arabia from illness, but the Prime Minister's office, tasked with handling the crisis, has confirmed only 31 deaths. The agencies are accused of deception, obtaining personal visit visas for their victims instead of Hajj visas. Pilgrims holding Hajj visas are entitled to medical treatment in Saudi hospitals, but holders of visit visas are not. Most of the victims died due to exhaustion caused by the scorching summer temperatures as they trekked through the desert into Mecca to avoid arrest or deportation. More than 50,000 Egyptians officially took part in this year's pilgrimage. The accused travel agencies have been referred to the prosecutor for investigation. Sierra Leone's parliament has approved a law banning child marriage in a development lauded by activists as a major win for children's rights. The law criminalizes marrying girls under 18 years of age. It also prescribes jail terms of up to 15 years for offenders. 1/3 of all girls are married before their 18th birthday in the West African country, according to UNICEF. The country is home to 800,000 child brides, 400,000 of whom were married before age 15, the UN body says. Often due to poverty, many girls in Sierra Leone fail to stay in school. They are then married off by their families in a bid to improve their financial situations or to pay off debt.
Ivory Coast this month launched mobile enrollment centers for the country's universal health coverage program, which has been criticized since its inception in 2019 over difficulties in accessing benefits. Samuel Tufe, who came to the mobile center to get updated on the coverage under the program, is disappointed. I am not happy with this card. There are so many pharmacies where if we go with the card, it doesn't work. Also, when we go to the hospital with the card, they say it doesn't work. So we don't know what this card is even worth. Bruno Anissan already has a universal health card but came to the mobile enrollment center in Abidjan to find information on how it could be used, but he is also unsatisfied. When we went to the pharmacy and I presented the voucher, the pharmacy said, no, this is only for civil servants, but it won't work for individuals. Despite the issues facing the program, Health Minister Pierre Bimba hopes that it can become a basic insurance that covers every Ivorian citizen, with private insurance used as only a supplement. We are currently considering the possibility of making this card usable in private establishments, and ultimately it's a unique platform of health coverage that we will have in our country, that if you are privately insured, you will be on the same platform as the universal health coverage, which will be the basic insurance. Other insurance will be just complementary, like in the great countries that we all know. While the government remains positive, only 40% of the population is registered in a program that has been heavily criticized by Ivorians as ineffective.
This is Ayatoro on Nigeria's Atlantic coast, where waves break over concrete bricks, wooden posts, and ruined homes. The lives of Ayatoro's residents have been upturned repeatedly as the sea eats into their neighborhood. Victoria Arewolo has lived here her whole life, but she has been forced to move home 3 times.
More than 2/3 of Ayatoro has been claimed by this sea erosion. Where we are is a new settlement. The old Ayatoro has been taken away by the sea. And if you look where the sea is now, that is the end of the former Ayatoro.
The remnants of sunken buildings bear the scars of the relentless advance of the sea. Thousands have left, but many others choose to stay. The sea has swallowed not just buildings, but aspirations alike.
Erosion affected me badly because I've lost my shop, lost my house. Even though I'm in one business before, I'm in boutique shop. So the value of my shop is about 8 million naira. So since the erosion came and I came back to learn the fiberglass work to survive with my life.
Researchers say a number of things are contributing to Ayatoro's disappearance. Underwater drilling is one reason, according to marine geologist Olusegun Dada.
The government have tried to limit the coastal erosion, but for me, I would say the government is putting the cart before the horse. And the reason why I say this is because the first thing that the government would have done is to carry out research about the processes, the marine processes that is responsible for the erosion, coastal erosion that we are having at Ayatoro.
For years, low-lying nations have warned the world about the existential threat of rising seas. Nigeria struggles to respond.
Tonight.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Woodman. Have a good life.